Story 1. It was the summer after I dropped out of college. I'd just moved back in with my mom, and I was doing a lot of driving around late at night to clear my head. That's how I ended up at a 24-hour MacDonald's off I-70, about 40 minutes outside Kansas City. I wasn't hungry, just restless. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a single black van parked way off in the back, away from the lights. I remember thinking it was weird that someone would park that far when there were dozens of open spots up front. I went inside. The cashier was a guy probably my age, eyes bloodshot and distant, like he'd been working too many night shifts. He didn't say anything beyond, "What do you want?" and barely looked at me. No one else was around. The dining area was silent, lit up with that pale, sterile yellow. There was this hum, the kind fluorescent lights make, but louder, like it filled up the whole space. I ordered fries and a Coke and sat near the front windows, where I could see the van. I was scrolling on my phone when I noticed it was gone. Just gone. I hadn't heard an engine, no headlights, nothing. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe I'd imagined it. But then the cashier came out from behind the counter. He walked straight over to the window, stared out for a good 10 seconds, then slowly turned back to me. "Did you see the van?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, it was right there." He didn't say anything else, just walked back to the kitchen. A minute later, I heard the freezer door slam. Then nothing. No kitchen noise, no beeping fryers, no overhead announcements. It was like the whole place had just stopped. I stood up, walked toward the counter. "Hey man, you okay?" I called. No answer. I leaned over the counter to look toward the kitchen and saw the freezer door open again, but no one came out. I swear I saw something, some shape, move just out of view, back near the fryer. I called again. Still no answer. I didn't feel safe anymore. As I turned to leave, the power cut out. Everything went black, except for the glow of the soda machine screen. I froze. My phone flashlight barely lit anything. That hum was still there, even louder. I rushed to the exit, and as I pushed open the door, I swear I saw the cashier standing motionless in the dark behind the counter, eyes wide, mouth slightly open like he was trying to scream, but couldn't. Outside, the van was back. Same spot. No one inside. No engine sounds. I jumped in my car and sped off. I never went back. 2 weeks later, I read a post on a local crime forum. A night shift McDonald's employee at that same location had gone missing. No signs of struggle. The post included a grainy security photo, time-stamped the night I was there. He was staring out the window, and I was sitting in the background, eating fries. Story 2. I used to work maintenance for a cluster of McDonald's locations across central Ohio. Most nights I just changed light bulbs, fixed soda machines, and unclogged toilets. One location, though, on the edge of a dying strip mall, gave me the creeps. I couldn't explain why. It wasn't dirty, and the staff were polite. But every time I worked there, I felt watched. One night, I got a call about a bathroom issue. I went over after hours. Around 2 a.m., the store was closed, but the manager had left the side door unlocked for me. When I stepped inside, it was dead quiet. The lights were on in the kitchen and dining area, but the air felt still. Thick, almost. I called out, "Maintenance!" No answer. The reported problem was a clogged drain in the men's bathroom. When I opened the door, the smell hit me first. It wasn't sewage. It was metallic, like rust and old meat. Inside, the lights flickered. There was water pooled around the drain, but not just water. Something red. I assumed maybe someone bled from a cut, but it was too much for a small wound. I stared at it, and then noticed handprints, wet, red, sliding down the wall behind the toilet. I stepped back out into the hallway and called the manager's number. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. That's when I heard it. A single wet slap, like a bare foot stepping into a puddle. It came from the kitchen. I moved carefully toward the back. There was a dark trail across the tile, smears of something leading toward the freezer. I reached for the door handle, and it clicked open before I touched it. No one was there. Just an open freezer, humming louder than usual. The air inside was foggy from condensation, but I thought I saw something deep in the back, a shadow that didn't move. didn't shiver from the cold. The smell from the bathroom hit me again, stronger. I shut the door fast and locked it. That's when my phone buzzed. One missed call from the manager. I called back. He answered, groggy. I told him about the mess. He said, "That's impossible. We haven't used that store in over a week. Everyone got reassigned. The place is shut down for inspection. Didn't corporate tell you?" I said no. He went quiet, then mumbled something like, "They were supposed to secure it." I asked, "Secure what?" The line went dead. I backed out, not even bothering to clean. As I locked the door behind me, I glanced inside one last time. The lights were off now, but I hadn't turned them off. And something moved between the tables, slowly, crouched, watching me. I quit the next day. Story 3. This happened when I was 17. I had just gotten my license and was obsessed with the idea of being out late, doing nothing. I'd drive around my quiet Indiana town with my dog, Scout, a big shaggy mutt who always rode shotgun. We didn't have anywhere to go. Just driving felt like freedom. One night, I pulled into a MacDonald's on the edge of town around 1:30 a.m. It was one of those older ones with the big red roof and a mostly empty lot. I grabbed a McChicken and a small fry. The lobby was closed, so I parked under a broken light and ate in my car with the windows cracked. Scout sat beside me, head on my shoulder like he always did. That's when he started growling, not barking. Just a low, rumbling growl that came from deep in his chest. His ears were perked, eyes fixed on something behind us. I looked in the mirror, saw nothing but the back lot and the dark field beyond it. I turned to check again. Still nothing. "Probably a raccoon," I whispered. But Scout didn't stop. If anything, his growl deepened. Then my dome light flickered, just for a second, like someone had opened a door and quickly shut it. But my car was locked. I checked the doors again. Still locked. I sat still, trying to listen. That's when I heard it. Slow footsteps outside, on gravel. Not fast, not sneaky. Just slow, measured, like whoever it was didn't care if I heard them. I turned around fully in my seat, and that's when I saw it. At the edge of the lot, just beyond the glow of the building's lights, was a figure. Not moving. Just standing there. Too far to make out details, but I could tell it was facing me, watching. I blinked, and they were closer. No walking, just closer. 15 feet now, still motionless. Scout started whining, pawing at the door, tail tucked. That scared me more than the figure. I'd never seen him afraid. I slammed the car in reverse and peeled out of there. As I left the lot, I glanced back in the mirror. The figure was standing exactly where my car had been. I didn't sleep that night. Scout stayed curled at my feet, trembling until morning. A week later, I drove past the McDonald's in daylight. There was yellow tape around the side of the building. I pulled over and asked a worker outside what happened. He said a man had been found dead in the field behind the lot. Decomposed. No ID. No shoes. The part that stuck with me? He said, cops think he'd been dead at least a week. But I saw someone standing there that night, watching me. Story 4. I was on a solo road trip through Nevada. One of those spontaneous, soul-cleansing things people do after breakups. I had no plan. No hotels booked. Just me, my car, and a duffel bag. One night, somewhere near Eerie, I realized I hadn't eaten in hours. My phone had no signal, but I spotted a glowing McDonald's sign in the distance, a little oasis off the empty highway. I pulled in. The lot was cracked and empty. The lights inside buzzed like they were struggling to stay on. A flickering open sign hung crooked in the window. I walked in. The place was eerily clean, spotless. Not a smudge on the counter, no crumbs on the floor. Everything was arranged too perfectly, like it had just opened and hadn't had a customer yet. Behind the counter stood an old woman in a pristine uniform, stiff as a statue. She smiled too wide, teeth unnaturally straight. "Welcome to McDonald's," she said. But her voice didn't match the smile. It was slow, almost dragged out. I ordered a cheeseburger and a coffee. She didn't write it down, just nodded and said, "Please take a seat." I sat at the booth closest to the door. She moved slowly behind the counter, like she wasn't quite sure what she was doing. No other employees came out. No drive-through beeps, no kitchen sounds. Just the hum of the lights and the occasional soft clink of her putting something together. When she finally brought the tray to me, the coffee was ice cold. The burger was wrapped in paper that looked decades old. Faded logo, weird texture. I opened it. The meat was gray, not undercooked. Gray, like it had been boiled and dried and left out too long. I didn't eat it. I just smiled politely, pretending to sip the coffee, and asked, "Do you get many people out here?" She paused, then said, "Sometimes the same ones come back." I tried to laugh it off. "Like regulars?" She tilted her head. "No, the same." Something about the way she said it froze me. I stood up, mumbled a thank you, and walked quickly toward the exit. But when I reached for the door, it wouldn't open. I pulled harder. Nothing. I looked back at her. She was still standing by the table, smiling that same stretched smile, hands clasped neatly in front of her apron. "There's no leaving until you finish," she said. I turned and kicked the door. Nothing. Then I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. I tried every other door. All locked. When I looked back, she was gone. Just gone. The burger was gone too. Only the tray remained. The lights flickered and went out. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up in my car, parked by the side of the road, several miles away. The passenger seat was wet, like something had been sitting there, dripping. The wrapper from the burger was on the floor. Story 5. I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour MacDonalds just off the interstate in northern Michigan. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills while I saved for college. Most nights were slow. Truckers, insomniacs, the occasional couple too drunk to care about food quality. But it was quiet, predictable. Until one night, it wasn't. It was around 3:10 a.m. when he walked in, alone, dressed in an oversized hoodie, jeans too short for his legs, and filthy white sneakers. He didn't say a word, just walked to the counter and stared at the menu like he didn't know what food was. I greeted him twice. He didn't blink. Then finally, without looking at me, he muttered, "Number 6. I rang it up, asked if he wanted a drink. Nothing. Just slid me a $10 bill and shuffled to the farthest booth, where he sat with his back to the wall, facing the door. As I prepped his order, I glanced over at him. He wasn't looking at the food counter. He was staring at the security monitor above it, the one that cycled through all the camera feeds. Parking lot, back entrance, kitchen, lobby. His head would twitch every few seconds, like he was tracking something just out of sight. I brought him his food. He didn't thank me, just unwrapped the sandwich with shaking fingers and whispered, "Do you see her?" I didn't know how to respond. Then he looked at me for the first time. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and completely full of panic. "She always comes in behind me," he said. "She waits. You'll feel her." I laughed nervously, thinking he was just strung out. Meth heads weren't unheard of around here, but something about his fear felt real. A minute later, I was back at the counter. That's when it happened. The door didn't open, but the wind chime above it, the cheap one we'd hung during the holidays, started ringing, gently, like someone had brushed past it. Then the lights above the booths dimmed, only for a second. Flicker. Normal again. I looked over at the man. He was curled into himself now, rocking slightly, eyes shut, lips moving fast. I called out, "Sir? Are you okay?" He didn't respond. Then I felt it. A weight behind me. No sound. Just presence. Thick. Wrong. Like someone was inches away from my back, but I knew no one was there. I turned quickly. Nothing. But the cold was undeniable. It had spread across the counter like a spill. My fingers went numb. The man opened his eyes, looked at me, and whispered, "She touched you, didn't she?" I ran into the kitchen and stayed there until the sun started to rise. When I finally came out, he was gone. No sign he'd eaten, no trash, no footprints, no receipt in the till. But the wind chime kept moving, slowly, even though the door had never opened again. I quit a week later. Story 6. I was driving home after a late shift in Tulsa. It was past midnight and I was starving. I saw the glow of a MacDonald's sign near an exit I didn't usually take, but hunger won. The place looked empty except for one silver sedan parked outside. The lobby was closed, so I hit the drive-thru. The speaker crackled and a voice said, "Go ahead." I ordered a double cheeseburger and a Coke. There was a long pause. Then, "Pull forward." As I rounded the bend to the first window, I realized no one was there. Just the empty drive-thru window with a hanging clipboard fluttering slightly in the breeze. I waited, unsure if I should go to the next one. Then I saw movement in the silver sedan parked near the dumpster. A figure in the driver's seat, staring forward. No headlights, no engine, just sitting. I pulled to the next window. Still no one. The kitchen inside was lit but empty, utterly still, like someone had stepped away and never returned. I put the car in park and leaned out my window to get a better look. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Heavy, ragged breathing. Close. Too close. But I was alone. I checked the mirrors. No one behind me. But the breathing continued, coming from somewhere inside the drive-thru window. It got louder, more erratic, almost wet. Then it stopped. The lights in the kitchen cut out. Gone. Total darkness inside. I hit the gas and sped out of there. As I pulled onto the highway, headlights suddenly appeared behind me, bright, high beams that flooded my car. I glanced back. It was the silver sedan. I sped up, but so did they. No plates, no brand badge, just a smooth silver body and dead straight motion. No swerving, no hesitation, like it was magnetized to me. I took the next exit, flew through red lights. The car stayed behind me for exactly 7 minutes. I know because I was counting, praying for each one to pass. Then it turned off with no signal and vanished into a side street. I pulled over, heart pounding, trying to collect myself. That's when I noticed the Coke cup in my center console. I never got to the window. I never got my order. But the cup was there, sweating and full, with a receipt tucked into the straw slot. It just said, "Drive safe. Come back soon." Story 7. Back in 2014, I lived in a small, worn-out town in central Kansas. One of those places with a single gas station, a diner that closed by 3, and a McDonald's that doubled as the town's social hub. I used to stop by late in the evening after my janitor shift, just to grab a coffee and sit alone for a while before going home. One night, I walked in around 10:30 p.m. It was winter, and the wind outside was sharp, the kind that cuts into your bones. The restaurant was mostly empty, except for a cashier wiping down the counter and an old man sitting in a booth near the far window. I'd seen him a few times before. He always ordered a filet-o-fish and never looked up from his tray. The place was quiet. My boots squeaked on the floor as I walked to the counter and asked for my usual. The girl behind the register smiled weakly, clearly tired. She handed me the coffee, and I took a booth by the window, across the room from the old man. That's when I noticed something odd. The old man wasn't eating. He was holding the sandwich, still wrapped and staring out the window, but there was nothing to see outside, just the dark parking lot and a single flickering light above the dumpster. I tried not to pay attention, but something about him kept pulling my eyes back. His posture was stiff, unnatural, like he hadn't moved in hours. And though his head was tilted slightly down, I swear I could feel him watching me. I told myself I was imagining it, took a sip of the lukewarm coffee and looked away. When I glanced back again, the wrapper in his hands was crumpled on the table. But the sandwich was untouched, sitting there, perfect. And his hands were now under the table, still, hidden. Then the fluorescent lights above us buzzed, once, then again. One went out. The booth next to his dipped into shadow. He didn't flinch. The girl at the counter asked if everything was all right. I nodded too quickly. The old man slowly turned his head. Finally, I thought, some movement. But what I saw made my stomach twist. He was smiling, but not like a normal smile. His mouth was stretched too wide, and his lips were dry, cracking in the corners like they hadn't moved in days. His eyes, cloudy and yellowed, met mine. And then, in a voice that didn't match his frail appearance, he said, "It's almost time." I froze. He didn't say anything else, just turned his head back to the window, sandwich untouched, hands beneath the table. I stood up, heart hammering in my chest. I walked over to the counter, told the girl I was heading out. She nodded, but didn't seem surprised. I glanced behind me before leaving. The old man was gone. No creak of the booth, no sound of the door, just gone. The sandwich remained, still wrapped this time, sitting perfectly in the center of the table. I stared at it, confused, until the girl at the counter called out softly, "He does that sometimes." I turned. "What?" She looked tired, not afraid, just resigned. "He shows up every couple months, always orders the same thing, never eats it." I laughed, but it came out dry. "Who is he?" She didn't answer, just turned back to wiping the counter. I left. But I drove by the next night, and the night after, and each time that booth was empty, until one night, weeks later, I saw him again. Same posture, same sandwich, same silence. I didn't go inside, but I swear, when I drove by the window, he turned and smiled directly at me, even though I hadn't parked. Just sat there, waiting. I haven't gone back since. And sometimes, when I see an untouched filet-o-fish at a table, or feel a sudden drop in temperature inside a fast food joint, I wonder what would have happened if I had asked him what it was time for. But I don't think I want to know.